Welcome back behind the screen. This is Dungeon Crawl Part 2. We're going to flesh out more of this dungeon that we're working on. I'm Dave, as always. This is Jim, and this is Crystal.
If you haven't checked out our other video,
You need to.
yeah, the part one of this, where we actually just kind of got the bones of the dungeon, and talked a little bit about ideas for it. It is a maze dungeon that is underneath a graveyard on the back of a gargantuan creature, living creature.
Yep.
It was made by
Lawful neutral paladins.
yeah, I guess you could say they're in order.
Yeah, of course. I mean, you're going to have paladins. They're going to be in order. It's a group. They're all like-minded.
True, very true. And the big key event in history that this is centered around this dungeon.
It's the site of a great miracle.
Yeah, so in that case, it's more so that this dungeon might be centered around it.
Yes, most certainly. The thing that was the turning point is the center of this maze. That's where the site of the miracle was, and then this maze was erected around it. From what we talked about, in between these was probably more so keeping people out while keeping this thing in, and it just wanders around. So the maze itself,
jail.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's a prison. essentially.
Exactly. Because these traps and functions and other things that might be peppered into this maze and this dungeon are going to go off regardless. They don't hold sway. So it's not like, oh, the big bad guy has control over all these things to stop adventurers. These are going to go off and interact with the adventurer or the monsters. That's going to be the big kind of, for me, this is going to be the big draw to running this kind of dungeon crawl, because it doesn't choose sides.
I almost got this feeling that the dungeon is the warden.
Yes.
The dungeon is the warden, the maze is the prison.
Yep.
Or maybe even the gargantuan creature is the warden. You know, it houses this thing. However you want to run that. But,
Yeah.
so just to kind of read off whenever a dungeon's purpose is a maze is intended to deceive or confuse those who enter. In this case, we're actually flavoring it, we're confusing things from getting out. And possibly both ways.
It is, that's what I was saying.
Yeah.
So it keeps everyone else in, but it keeps this thing out.
Right.
And if somebody happens to run across this thing that's being trapped in here, they're gonna die.
Yeah, regardless.
Or the order of the paladins are gonna kill them with these other traps and misdirections, and they're just gonna get lost and locked in forever, or something happens because one small loss of life versus the loss of many.
Right, yes. Some mazes are elaborate obstacles that protect treasure. Others are gauntlets for prisoners banished there to be hunted and devoured by the monsters within.
That's pretty brutal.
Yeah.
That also reminds me a lot of Rasa?
Rosroska.
Rosroska.
It's a weird name. I ran a mini campaign based out of a prison.
Dungeon.
Oh, yeah.
If you've seen One Piece, it's Water 7. Impel Down.
If you haven't seen One Piece,
Yeah,
that just
it's
sounds
a
really
super
fucking weird.
It's a super prison with multiple layers. The lower down you go, the worse it gets. And that's essentially what this dungeon crawl that I did, flavored as a prison break, was. Alright, so now we're going to actually be going into it's the section for the dungeon inhabitants, but there's a lot of stuff covered in here. It's once again in Chapter 5, Adventure Environments, in the Dungeon Master's Guide. And it's starting on page 101. So it talks about, like, one of the first things you're going to run across is, like, dungeon factions. It's sometimes dominated by a single group of intelligent humanoids. I'm pretty sure that it's safe to say that it's probably the paladins, if they are still around.
I want to believe that the graveyard that is the entrance to this dungeon is the Order of Paladins.
Oh, I get you.
That they died doing this, and then the few that were survivors made these graves and housed it to keep people out. Because remember, you have to go down in order to get to this maze.
That's true.
And it's in a very obscure place, like the back of a giant creature.
Yeah.
So if you make it up there, and you have this great miracle happen, and this maze happens, and you make your way back out, chances are you're not coming back down.
This is true.
So they stay behind because there may be some living ones up there, which would pose a bit of an opposition. But that also leads you to have loot, treasure, traps, whatever inside those graves to start the encounter. It's not just, hey, here's a grave, jump on in. It leads and lets your players kind of root around and dig through things as much as our little grave digger here has done in the past. Because now it's like, is it a cakewalk getting in, or do you guys investigate and possibly dig up more trouble than it's worth?
Right. Or even having it trapped as far as when they even try to enter not even the dungeon itself, like try and enter the entrance to it.
Exactly, because now they have to hunt, they also have to hunt down the entrance.
Yeah.
Because it could be a shallow, empty grave.
This is true.
That's like a
I've
stairway
always pictured
down.
the mausoleum.
Fair. The other thing, too, that had just struck me is you can make it to where digging up these graves might start to pull favor away from the deity that's aligned with the order. So now you have to worry about a god coming down on you.
Yeah, and I think that is something that if you don't warn your players about, probably don't throw God at them.
Or do it.
He would probably do it.
He would.
But, if you don't give them any kind of fair warning and you're really just looking to kill them, then yeah, do it. But
for the sake of this, as just being a dungeon crawl, that's something farther off. The warning, I think, would be the better option, or not to use the deity's intervention.
Yeah. Maybe as an intervention, it starts to rain. And now you've got mud, difficult terrain, and then something starts happening, and you're just like, ugh. And just bad luck all the way around.
Yeah.
So,
but we digress. Let's jump back into why you're all here.
The next part is on the next page, 201, and it's actually something that we would have to discuss a little bit. It's the dungeon ecology, the environment. An inhabited dungeon has its own ecosystem. The creatures that live there need to eat, drink, breathe, and sleep just like creatures in the wilderness do. So this is a maze.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I'm picturing like stonework.
Yeah, most typically it's going to be stone or wood or rock or something like that, to where they can't really break through walls. They may change. It might be some parts magical.
So it's like a white marble wall that.
I swear to God. I don't care who sees it. It'll look like an accident.
It's from a home game. Nothing worked.
You besmirch his name. That's what you did.
So,
what you did.
What besides whatever is being trapped within here, whatever is being held prisoner, do you think that there would be other creatures?
Oh God, yeah.
Now, what kind of creatures? Because we got to think, it can't be something that needs to eat, drink, and all that a lot. Something that maybe how snakes can they eat one meal and go a month or several months without eating.
Yeah.
Something along those lines. Something that does need to eat, but not as often.
Yeah, and I mean, given the location and what's going on, you can really look at other aberrations. So you can pull into like gigantic beasts, your snakes, your worms. You could pull into a lot of undead.
Yeah.
Again, still you have that because maybe not everyone made it out. There is something that this maze is trying to hold in.
Yes.
Well, the people that didn't make it out were probably the food.
It's very possible.
I mean, I also think that once we flesh out the villain, we're going to be able to determine a little bit more because maybe they can conjure something.
Yes. And I think that's where it'd be fitting to jump to, is fleshing out the villain of this, the main center point. What was this miracle focused on?
Okay.
Because your flora and fauna
Gotcha.
is all in there, but until we have a basis, it's all kind of conjecture. Now, you don't have to do it this way, but this is how we're doing it, just for that sake.
So, let's see. How do you want to do it? Do you want to do the standard races, or you want to do some monstrous?
I would do something monstrous, and I would really go back to the creator's table.
Yeah.
And instead of it being the creator of the dungeon, but this is your main focal point, because we already have the creator that you saw from the first video. We have that lawful, neutral, human paladin order. So that's your creators. But now, what's the purpose of being? What's inside? So to kind of get that, I would say roll back to the creators section because it does have a lot more of these monstrous or villainous types in that list. So I would roll that again.
And I know we outside of this video we kind of talked about excluding humans.
Yeah.
Instead of looking at it like because it gives things like dwarves, giants, humans, and plural, taking it singular first of all, where it's a singular evil big bad.
Sure.
But also keeping humans as an option because if you roll a human, think about how kind of terrifying a human is that powerful.
Oh God, yeah. No,
I mean,
I'm right there with you. I agree.
So we're gonna go back to the creators table as a D20.
So we're gonna write this down. BB.
And this is going to be the big bad. This is the thing locked within this maze prison.
8.
8 is a dwarf.
Sure.
Interesting. Especially kind of scary the fact that a dwarf with, stone cutting, that knows about stonework, and this dungeon is kind of made of stone,
Yep.
that he can't figure something out.
That they had to make a maze around him for.
Right,
Yeah,
and
it's not get out.
it's got to be a one badass maze.
Yeah, and
Sure.
I mean, it could be a clan. It could be a dwarf. Oh God, it could be a lot of things. It could be a spellcaster. It could be something.
Yeah, so let's actually figure that out. It's a D20 to figure out the class. Kind of fleshing this guy out a little bit more, or girl.
16.
16 is a warlock.
Oh, that's definitely going to be bringing in a patron.
Yes, definitely.
It's
a
a
C.
or sick if you've watched our other videos.
It is. Oh man.
Yes.
So there's
That's
3 in
where
this
Ursic
one,
went.
and what, 2 in this one?
Yes, I believe so.
All right, so a D6, and we won't fully flesh them out. We're just gonna give you the bones of them.
Yeah. 4. So
4?
that's going to be in there.
So it's the first one in here.
And I believe it's
It's the Celestial.
Yep.
So this thing gets celestial power, and it's being trapped.
Well,
And it's also about, I guess lawful neutral can kind of go either way, but they lean more towards the structured law.
But do we want to roll an alignment for?
Yeah. That's interesting, though. How do you
Yes.
convince a patron, a celestial patron, if we end up rolling that he's evil?
Yeah.
yeah.
So it is a D20
Sure.
to determine the alignment.
Evie, stop.
12.
12, chaotic neutral.
Okay.
So at least it's chaotic. At least it fits.
Neutral. And then we're going to get a few more things out of the way.
Yep. What would you like to go to? We've got some really detailed fleshing out that we can do as far as whoop, wrong way. As far as like appearance and such, defining features.
I would probably stick to what do we have? We have dwarf, so we have race, we have class, we have archetype, we have alignment. Let's do male or female, just the defining features first.
Okay, so yeah,
Alright. There's a 1.
a 1. So it's male. The D4 method, 1 and 2, or 1 and 3 is male. 2 and 4 are female. Something else though is we don't have archetype, and if this thing is powerful enough to be needed to trap, then there's going to be an archetype. He's going to be high up there with power.
Wouldn't that be celestial?
That is the patron.
That's the patron.
We need the pact.
That's right, so I'll change that.
And there's only 3. I remember that from last time now.
Yeah.
So
There's
it's
blade, tome, and chain.
chain. Yep. And we're gonna it's chain, blade, tome. So we're
Okay.
gonna go in that order. Reroll 4s.
4.
3.
3. So tome. Which ironically is the same
As Orson.
as Orsic.
It's also the same as Sargeras, where he had
Yeah.
Cthulhu.
Did he? I thought he had a pack of chain because he had the
Pack
familiar.
his home, yeah.
Oh, really?
He might have had chain. I don't know. I can't remember.
I think so because he was casting spells through the
He had the
little
familiar.
imp.
Yep. My bad.
All right.
But now we have a framework for our actual location for our dungeon crawl, and now we have a framework for our big bad of the dungeon crawl. Thank you for watching. Again, I'm Dave. This is Jim, and that's Crystal, and this has been behind the screen dungeon crawl.
All right. Till next time, y'all.